Mr. Kip Sorensen, what's up, man? Hey, it's good to see you put some decorations up behind you there.
Yeah, it's the guy by the fern instead of in between ferns or whatever. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, you're talking about Zach Galifianakis or whatever his name is.
Yeah.
Did you see that one where he did with Hillary Clinton?
Oh my goodness, it's so uncomfortable. I
It is
all of them
so
are.
uncomfortable and so amazing at the same time. That guy just he's amazing. It's so funny.
Super funny. Super
Yeah.
funny.
So
Yeah.
you're the man behind or in between one shrub.
Fern and Shrub. Yeah. Shrub podcast.
That's
Join
right.
us weekly.
That's right. Hey, it's the effort. It's the
I'm
effort
trying.
that
I'm
counts.
trying.
That's
Well,
you're improving
well,
gradually, but you are getting better.
and I got some sticky notes just in case you need to draw like an impromptu viewers. I'll just pull up the sticky note. I'm prepared is what we're
You
doing.
are. And what's next to the sticky note? What is that? Is that a
That's
plant or no, right next to it. Is that a
you
plant?
criticizing. Yeah, that's a plant to the right of the sticky note. And
That's the fern. Okay.
and that's scotch tape on the other side of the sticky note because that's also very critical to have scotch tape available.
It is. You got to have scotch tape. And you have a little Iron Council hat on your head, which is nice too.
Yeah. Just like wear it like this.
It's right on top. It's one of those little Shriners hats, is what it looks like. You know those little red Shriners.
Hey, there you go. We should have a Shriners chapter of the Iron Council, and we'll have little Iron Council
Sure.
hats for them. Yeah,
Yeah,
when we're all old
the
men.
hats will be available soon. Those guys are awesome. They ride around in their little cars at parades, and
Yeah,
that's awesome. All right, well, here we are for another round of Ask Me Anything.
yeah.
Glad to be
It's
joining you,
good
man.
stuff. Yeah, it's good. Great podcast, by the way, with Mr. Jocko that just got released yesterday. So that was
Yeah, it's
excellent.
funny. It's funny you said it took him a minute to warm up because I posted that on YouTube. We had Cody Lanham. He does all of our editing for us, and he posted that
Yeah.
on YouTube. And one of the comments on there was like, "Jocko seems mad today," or something like that. And I'm like, I don't think he's mad. I just think it's like
Matter
his
of fact, Jocko.
yeah, and it's like
Yeah.
his thing about happy face or smiley face or whatever, excited face, and it's all the same faces. Like I don't think he's mad. I just think
Yeah.
that's him, stoic, very stoic,
Yeah. It's so
which is
funny.
makes it how do I say it? It makes me test my resolve as an interviewer at times. But yeah, it was good. It was powerful. Of course, great insight, always valuable information. Just takes a minute to get them fired up.
Yeah. Yeah. It was great.
Cool,
Nonetheless,
man.
it was a really great episode.
Well, should we jump into some questions from the guys today? I think we got a lot
Yes,
today.
sir. Yeah, maybe a tad. Well, not. There's never too much questions, but we got a lot. There's no way we're getting through these. When we ask you guys for questions, we get flooded. So
They do not
um,
disappoint.
no, we got some Iron Council questions as well as some questions from the Facebook group. We'll cover the Iron Council first to learn more about what is the Iron Council, because the probability of us talking about the Iron Council is really high. I was thinking about it the other day. It's like you listen to Rogan or Jocko, for instance, and there's constant reference of jiu-jitsu on those podcasts. There's constant reference of Iron Council in this podcast. To learn about the Iron Council, go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. It's very secret. So
It's very
that's all we can tell
secretive.
you.
Yes,
Exclusive brotherhood.
and not only that, you'll just get more out of this podcast. So there you go.
Yeah. There you go. All right. Mitch Vance, my brother, 40 years old, calls himself a survivor, but the truth is he's weak. Many of us are surrounded by natural men we love and want to see them on the journey to become a sovereign man. Where would you start?
Where would I start for myself or for my brother?
I'm assuming for your brother, your weak brother. Help him.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's weird. Why would he call himself a survivor? I'm just trying to think in what context. I'm a survivor. I don't know. It sounds
Well,
strange. Whatever.
I actually think, I mean, if you think about it, the average person is like, there's a little bit of, how do I say this? I don't know why, but when I hear survival, I think there's like a little tendency of like victimhood a little bit. Like I'm surviving and I'm persevering, even though all
Yeah.
these things happen to me. And there's a little bit of woe factor, in it.
Well,
And
even
maybe that's what he's calling out.
I agree. I can see that. I even think you said another word, perseverance. I kind of look at like perseverance, surviving as like lowest common denominator.
Yeah.
Like I survived. That means you barely made it out alive. Essentially, is what
yeah.
that means.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not thriving when you survive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm not calling his brother out. I'm just saying the choice of words is interesting. Like I
Yeah.
don't want to be a survivor. I want to be a kick-ass fill in the blank. Like I want to be the
Yeah.
best of the best. Not I just survived. You
Yeah.
were talking about jujitsu earlier. It's like how'd you do? Oh, I survived. Well, that means you sucked.
Yeah. Yeah. You'd want
That
to say
means
I
you just
dominated. I
you were
destroyed.
one right. You were one notch up above losing. You were the first loser, the second loser. Right. Essentially, is
Yeah.
what you were. So, all right. All that to preface with. Now, what do we do about it? Well, look. If he doesn't think there's anything wrong, what are you going to fix?
Yeah.
That's why I say focus all of your time, your attention, your energy, your resources, everything that you can and have on the people who you have a responsibility for. And I would say that there's a partial responsibility for your brother. I mean, maybe not totally like your wife or your children. Excuse me. But for your brother, yeah, that's your family. Like, of course. So I commend, what's the gentleman's name who's asking the question?
Mitch.
Mitch. So Mitch, I commend you. You care about your brother, obviously. Sometimes we come into problems when we care about their success more than they do. I actually heard that term when I was a financial advisor 6-7 years ago. Is one of my trainers would say, hey, look, you can't care about it more than they do. If you care about their success more than they do, it's just not going to be a great relationship. It's not going to be a good working relationship. They're not going to do what you say. It's going to be a headache. And I have found that to be true not only in the financial planning business, but life in general. Kip, if I care more about your success than you do, I mean, that's all fine and great, but it's an exercise in futility. It's like it's not going to happen. In fact, it's going to make things worse because I'm going to place expectations on you. You're going to fail to meet those expectations. I'm going to become bitter and contentious because I feel like you're wasting my time when I was the one who actually volunteered it. You're going to be resentful towards me because we can't just hang out as bros. I always got to be coaching you and pushing you. So if I'll address this question from two different perspectives. If there's nothing wrong from his mind, he's a survivor, he's doing it, he's on it, then just be a brother. And what I mean by that is go bowling, go to the game together, invite him over for family barbecue. But you don't need to be sending him books and resources and podcasts and, oh, listen to this and fix this and you're not doing this right. Just be there, because I think what is more likely to happen is if you can bring him into the circle, he'll start to see you, Mitch, and think, man, my brother's got something figured out. Like, what's going on? And then hopefully he will begin to solicit you for information and advice. And there's your permission slip, because right now you might not have it. I'm making a bunch of assumptions here, but you just might not have it. Now, that said, if he knows that he wants to fix things and he's like, hey, like Mitch, you seem to be doing good and I'm struggling in my relationship or with my fitness. Like, what are you up to? What are you up to? In that case, I would suggest that you invite him to the Iron Council. You're a member here. That you have him go through the Battle Ready program, orderofman.com/battle ready. That you invite him in again to your circle. You send him resources, whether that's a book or this podcast, and just let him know, hey, man, I'm thinking about you. I came across this. I thought it would apply based on our conversation we had over the weekend. Check it out. Let's circle back in a couple of days and we'll talk about it. And that's it. I think sometimes the answers, Kip, that we give are not satisfactory because they're not grandiose and they won't produce the result immediately. But I'm just telling you, if you do these things every single time and you're consistent and you're relentless with these types of things that we're talking about, even though they may not be huge leaps, they're just micro steps, and you compound those over years, things are going to happen. It's just not as exciting as saying, do this one thing and all of a sudden your brother's problems will be solved.
Yeah. I like the analogy of, and we use this analogy a lot of being on the path. I don't think we can pull people on it. They have to join that path on their own. Now, once they're on the path, now you're in a position, right? You've build up some collateral, you have some trust, you've built some respect with your brother, and now you're in a great position to provide some guidance and direction. But until he's on that path, which has to be his call, not yours, there's nothing for you to do, right? Unfortunately. And it's the lighthouse effect, and we talk about that quite a bit, is we can't be tugboats and force change on people. It's just not something that works. And in fact, it was funny because you know how it is. Instagram, social media, it's like, you know, I was watching some videos of, you know, black man, you know, drops serious knowledge bomb on Black Lives Matter white lady about, you know, racism or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. And it's funny because you watch it and you're like, hey, that guy said some really valid points that were really profound. The point is did the woman change? Right. And the answer is no.
Of course not.
No, of course not. She walked away still pissed off, and she saw
maybe even worse.
Yeah. She saw the whole situation drastically different than the person who made the post, right? It's like, oh yeah, they made her. It's like, no, not really. Actually, she probably walked away thinking the same thing that she thought before, and no one's mind's changed, right? Just because you have some really good like argument points.
Yeah. And that's why. So sometimes I get accused of ignoring or blocking people on social media who quote unquote disagree with me. Guys, I don't block people for disagreeing with me. I block people who it's clear to me that they are not interested in what we're doing here. Yeah. So if I can tell, for example, that you're interested, that you disagree with me, and yet you're interested in the discussion, you're interested in the philosophy, you're interested in improving yourself as a man, then I'm all on board to have a discussion. But if you're disagreeing with me with the motive or the intent just to be a dick, and it's clear, it's evident to me that you're not even interested in anything, yeah, then I'll block you because I don't need that in my space. But the point I'm making here, exactly, and the point that I'm making is like, why would I waste my time and energy, even if it's simple as, because look, when I see a negative comment, you know, I've had, and anybody who's put themselves in the public has to develop some thick skin. People way more than I have, just because of their notoriety and their visibility. But even though I've been able to develop some thick skin, like that stuff makes a difference. And so I don't want it in my space. I can't have it in my space. The only reason I'll have it here is because I do know somebody is interested, although they disagree and see things differently, which is fine. But that's an individual who has a vested interest in improving. But if they don't have a vested interest in improving, there's nothing I can do. And there's nothing I even want to do. Because look, here's the other thing. How much time are you going to take away from your family trying to help your brother who may not be interested? How much time would I take away from another man who sends me an email and is in a crappy situation because I'm hung up on what this dingus over here said? You know, like I've got to focus where my resources, my attention go, where I can have the greatest impact. All right, next question.
Cool. Love it. I got a great quote to wrap up this thought. I don't know. I mean, it was a Stoic quote, but I don't know who this is from. Maybe you know. We'll just assume it's like Epictetus or something. But it says, before you heal someone, ask him if he's willing to give up the things that made him sick. And I kind of think about that, like in his brother's perspective, is he willing to give up being just a survivor? And if he's not, then it doesn't matter.
But what can you do? Yeah. Just be around him.
All right, Thomas Zimmerman. Yeah. Thomas Zimmerman. Good morning, gentlemen. I just finished listening to the 30 Days to Battle Ready podcast, and I want to accomplish this. I'm currently working about 12-hour days, 6 days a week, 6 kids at home, and a frail wife. Having said that, what strategies would you suggest to remain consistent? And by the way, thank you, Ryan, for helping me to decide to stick with the Iron Council. I'm very glad I have.
Cool. This is Thomas, right?
Yeah.
So here's what I'd say, not just for the Battle Ready program, but anything that somebody might be doing. Whether it's an instrument, you know, picking up a new instrument, or getting into martial arts, or training, or preparing for a marathon, or learning to paint, or going through a Battle Ready program, or 75 Hard's, another program with Andy Frisella. Like, it doesn't matter what you're doing. Here's what I would say. I know that there's a half an hour in your day. I know there is. You're telling me you work 12 hours a day. You've got 6 kids. I think the term you used was frail wife. I'm not sure
Frail
what's a
wife.
frail.
Yep.
So I'm not sure entirely
Yeah,
what
maybe
that
her health
means, if
is
that's
not good.
physically or emotionally. I'm not sure there. But I know that you have a half hour. I know that you have maybe even 20 minutes. So you got 20 minutes. What are we going to do in that 20-minute time frame? Put the phone away, put the podcast away, turn this off if you're listening to it, pick up a book for 20 minutes, pick up your journal for 20 minutes. The Battle Ready program does not actually require as much as you're thinking, because I space it out and say, okay, here's the assignment. I'm going to check back with you tomorrow, give some more insight on the same assignment. Then I'm going to check back with you tomorrow and make sure you have it done. So there's like a 48-hour window for you to get it done. And if you can carve out 20, 40, 60 minutes in that time frame, you'll be able to get everything done. But it's about placing an emphasis on what it is that you want to do. You can accomplish a lot in 20 minutes. You know, if I want to pick up the guitar and strum, I could do a quick lesson. It's not as good as an hour, but it's better than nothing. So I can pick up the guitar and I can, for 20 intentional minutes. And that's the other thing you got to realize too. And I noticed this in the gym. Me personally, when I go in and into my garage and I work out, it takes me an hour, maybe longer slightly. But when it takes me an hour, it's because I'm like checking Instagram posts in between and like, oh, I got to answer this call, and oh, somebody sent me an
selfie.
email. Exactly.
Yeah, taking a selfie. Yeah.
Making an Instagram post, right? So total time working out is probably less than 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So
in the grand scheme of things. And if you eliminated those 30 minutes, that workout would have been way better.
Well, not only that, but then you would have been able to get back on with life, and you would have been more productive with your wife, more productive with your kids. There's other things that you can do, like task stacking. And I call it task stacking, but if I need to go do a workout, like, well, I'm going to invite my 12-year-old son with me to come work out. Now, it's probably not going to be as good of a workout, but it's still a workout, and he's there, and I'm spending time with him, and I'm getting a workout in, and that's what happens when I have 4 kids. How many do you have, Kip? You have
too many. 7.
7. Yeah. Thomas has got 6. Like, we all got a lot of kids, and that's just what you have to do. You got to make it work. So find the 20 to 30 minutes every day. Even if you have to wake up 20 minutes earlier, do it. You make it happen.
Yeah. Cool. All right, there you go, Thomas. Glenn Schwinn, I've noticed myself thinking a lot during the COVID thing. It's been months of the same everyday cycle now. I finally just quit and have replaced my drinking time with 75 hard, Iron Council, and reading. The nights are the hardest, though. Any recommendations for activities that I can get involved in at home or after the kids go to bed outside of the aforementioned things? Kind of seems on top of it, to be honest.
Yeah. No, it's good. You're thinking about it. You just need a hobby. So reading is good. You know, every time you're tempted to get a drink or whatever, then, you know, just read. I've been mentioning it before. I really enjoy playing the guitar. I actually really enjoy it. I've never picked up a musical instrument in my life before, other than the recorder in like 3rd grade. Outside of that, nothing. And I have played the guitar, I would say, without missing a day. Daily, every day. Because if you're going to do something, you have to do it every day. That's my opinion.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. To generate the habit of it. Yeah.
Like if you're going to dabble, just don't do it. Unless you just don't care enough about it. And that's fine too. But if you care about it, then you have to do it every day. So, so guitar, every day, I would say for at least 90 days, at least, maybe even closer to 120 days of not missing a single day, except for when I was traveling, and that's it. So I'll tell you, the reason that's so powerful, and this is the same with jiu-jitsu. My friend and I, Brody Cousineau, were talking the other day. The reason it's so powerful, whether it's jiu-jitsu or in this case guitar, or I think a hobby like painting or drawing could probably have a similar effect. Yeah. I think the part of the reason it's so powerful is because there's no other time or point in your life where you are completely dialed in with 100% focus and attention, and you're not distracted by everything else or anything else. Like, my wife can come in and ask me a question when I'm playing the guitar, and I know she came in and I know she said something to me, and then after I'm done, I'm like, hey, what did you say? Because honestly, I didn't hear you. And she's like, yeah, you're ignoring me. I'm like, no, I was just so focused. So I know you said something to me, I just don't know what it was. That's the beauty of it. Is look, when you're
Yeah.
engaged, is it Glenn? Is that
Glenn, yeah.
Glenn? So Glenn, when you're engaged that way, you're not thinking about getting a drink. You're thinking about, hey, I'm on this riff or I'm on this guitar. I can't figure this out. I got to practice this chord. Or, hey, this guy's trying to strangle me. So, like, I'm not thinking about, I need a drink right now. I'm thinking about, how can I get his arms off of my neck? If you can find something that's going to just take your entire mental capacity and energy and focus on that, the temptation of anything else, whether it's drinking or pornography or drugs or whatever, is not even gonna. It's not even a temptation. It's not even in your mind, because you're so hyper focused on something else. And there's, like I said earlier, there's no other thing in life. Like even now, how many things are you guys doing that are listening to right now that you're listening to this podcast? You're listening to this podcast, you're working out. You're listening to this podcast, you're mowing the lawn. You're on a drive, you're answering messages. You're at work trying to do some work and you're listening to this podcast. Like you're not even doing it now.
Yeah.
So there isn't another time in your life where you're going to have more focus. And once you can focus that heavily on something, then the temptation of drinking or whatever your vice is doesn't seem to be an issue.
Yeah, totally. When that's why jiu-jitsu and a lot of extreme sports, there has been massive progression in those sports, because the ability to learn and pick up something new when you're in that state of mind, and some refer to it as like a flow state, you learn drastically faster. And here at my company, we're actually implementing kind of some deep work strategy to actually improve and provide employees kind of the boundaries to actually learn new technologies faster, right? So we're better at what we do. And I've done a lot of studying around this subject, and it's quite amazing how satisfaction and gratitude for life drastically increases when you have focused time in your life. So if you have the chance to focus in on something, you feel more gratified. You feel more accomplished. It makes you feel better about your day. Like it's above and beyond just guitar. You actually feel better because you're able to get laser focused in on something and feel accomplished. And the opposite of this is busy. The opposite of this is, well, I really had a really busy day. I replied to emails and I had this conversation, blah, blah, blah. And then you sit down and you go, did you get anything done?
Of course not.
And then the answer is no, right?
No.
And you know that. Like, you're not going to bullshit yourself. You know you didn't get shit done, right? But when you have focus time and you actually get something done and you do it well, like, I hung out with my kid while I played on Instagram and social media. No. But when you're 100% present with your kid, then when you're not, you feel good about the time that you did spend with them, right? Mm-hmm. Because you're fully present and you were focused and you're intentional, and you're just going to feel better about yourself. You're going to learn better, and you're just going to feel more accomplished for the day, period.
Yeah.
There's science. There's science.
Science.
Okay. Michael Ray, Team Victor. Hey, Ryan, I know you've recently moved. This is a long question. Sorry, Ray. Michael, I'm going to kind of beat this up because he totally goes on tangents. But ultimately, I'm moving my family. I know you recently moved your family from Utah to Maine, so I have a question for you about this pre-move decision process. My wife and I currently are planning on moving our family, one young daughter, out of Southern California, and are currently considering, but not limited to, Idaho, Utah, or possibly Montana. I was wondering if there are specific methods in which you identified and evaluated potential new homes. Was there certain attributes you looked for in a new hometown? Also, looking back at your search process, what do you think you did right, and what would you have done differently the next time around? And then he goes into his current term table and why he wants to get out of California. And Michael, we all know why you'd want to leave California. At least I do anyway. So any feedback you have, any feedback you have would be greatly appreciated. Thank you, Ryan and Kip, for all your great content each week. And sorry, I didn't read all the rest of your question. It would just take too long.
Okay. So I'm not the best. You seem like a very thoughtful individual. And I am not. I'm a very intuitive individual. So if it feels right, do it. I don't get hung up on the details, which serves me very well in a lot of instances. And it creates a lot of collateral damage in the path.
Yeah.
But that's my personality. So you as a thoughtful individual are asking an intuitive individual what his thought process was. Here's my thought process. Let me tell you the story for those of you guys who don't know. It's very fast. 2 years ago, I come out here because Pete, my friend with Origin, invites me to come up here for immersion camp. Did you come that year? The first year. Have you gone 2 years now?
Yeah, I think I came the first year.
Yeah, so you came the first year with me. Okay.
Yeah.
So I came up here, loved it. Fell in love with Maine. It was beautiful. The lakes. Remember, we drove around. We were driving around in between time. And
we were like checking out some old houses out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. My wife and I had always wanted, or have for a long time, wanted to move and go on a little adventure. We have the flexibility. We have the financial resources and capital to be able to do it. So it was like the timing was good. So I'm sending pictures and video back to my wife. I'm like, look at this house and look at this place and look at this. And she's like, yeah, it's beautiful now. Why don't you come back out in the winter? It's like, okay. So talk to Pete. Pete's like, yeah, come out in the winter. You can stay at our place. So we stayed at one of Pete's properties, and we fell in love with it. She got a real estate agent. I didn't even know when she scheduled it. I'm like, wait, what? She's like, well, didn't you want to look at houses? I'm like, well, I didn't know you'd want to. So we look at probably a dozen different places. And we get done with the last place, and the last place we looked at is just about 3 to 4 miles right up the road here. It's a beautiful place. It just needed some work that we just weren't willing to put into it. So kind of turned into a dud. Like nothing really came. There wasn't anything that stood out. So we drive down this road. My real estate agent's like, hey, we've got this one other place. They've already got an offer in on it, but they're entertaining backup offers. So let's just go look. And we drive down the road, which is this highway right here. We drive down the road, and we get down the road and we see this house, and it's beautiful. We thought it was a bed and breakfast. We're like, whoa, look at that place. And our real estate agent pulls into this place. And we get out of the car.
Front?
What's that?
No sign out front? You just saw it and pulled over?
No, this was the place that he had that was entertaining backup offers.
He was going to show you. Got it.
Yeah. It wasn't on our list of houses because it was an extra one that he just threw in.
I see.
Yeah. So we get out, and my wife's like, we want to put an offer in on it. I'm like, well, hold up. Like, let's go look at it first. And so, long story short, we fell in love with it. And the next day we put an offer in on it. So I'd only been to Maine. This was my second visit to Maine. We know like 7 people, if that even.
Yeah.
And that was my wife's first visit. So again, you're asking somebody who just like said, yeah, let's do it. Let's just wing it.
Yeah.
And I do that in every facet of my life. Like, oh, yeah, that sounds good. People ask me about my testimony, my spiritual testimony. Oh, tell me, why'd you decide to get baptized? Tell me about your testimony of Christ. And I'm like, I really appreciate that question. Yeah. But like, I don't have anything valuable to add, because the reason I got baptized was because I can't even remember the verse, but there was a verse that I read and I started to tear up, and I was like, oh yeah, this is good. This is good, and this is right. And so I got baptized. Yeah. But also too, I stick with my decisions. I'm not flippant. So some people might mistake that with being like, oh, you're just reckless, you're flippant, you just do whatever. No. When I make decisions, I stick with them. But I'm very intuitive.
All in. Yeah.
All in. And if something feels off, I just don't make the decision. Not that I thought about it Okay, so that's a long preface to your question. The answer is any answer that I give you is not going to suffice for you because of your personality. But some of the things that I would look into, he's got kids, right? I think you mentioned kids.
Yep, one daughter.
School district, when this whole COVID thing frees up, I would look at crime rates. I would look at poverty rates. I would look at median household income. The higher, the better. People aren't going to like me saying that, but that's true. You know, poverty it tends or I should say crime rates increase with poverty rates. It is what it is.
It's the reality. Yeah.
It's the reality. I would look, for us, it would be important to look at, outdoor activities because that's what we enjoy. We also looked for a church. There was a church about 5 miles from here, and so that was perfect. If that church wasn't here, church for us would be, I think it was like an hour and a half to 2 hours away, which is a long trip with 4 kids.
There goes that testimony. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I don't feel that good about it.
Yeah. It's not.
I don't feel that good about it anymore.
That drives you brutal. That's not
But
worth it.
yeah, but
Salvation
those
is
are the
not
things
worth
I would.
an hour and a half.
Yeah,
Drive.
those are the things I would be looking into, and we did. I'm not going to say we didn't consider those things. We did. I just made it more intuitively than
Yeah.
very thoughtful.
Well, there's, I don't know, man. Like, and I know you can't really measure that stuff, but there's something to be said for that, though, too. Like, and I don't know how
I
you
can't
find
think
that
of a time.
intuition, but
I know how to do it. You listen to it more and you exercise it.
yeah, then
Because
you become more aware of it, and yeah,
and you know what it's telling you. It's like another language almost. And you have to, so you listen to this other, God, this is a weird conversation now. You listen to this other sense. We'll just call it a sense, which is intuition. Okay. We'll call it a sense for the sake of argument.
yeah. And by the way, then intuition probably has all kinds of labels depending on your spiritual beliefs. Yeah,
For sure. Yeah.
yeah,
But you don't quite know how to decipher it as well as the way something tastes, or when you hear somebody speaking your native language. Like, you don't understand how to decipher it. So then how do you know? You know by acting on it, and you're like, oh, and then reflection. That actually worked. Or I'm going to do this, and oh, that didn't work. Well, why didn't it work? Because I thought I was supposed to do this. Oh, it didn't work because you ignored or overlooked this one thing that wasn't convenient. That's your fault.
yeah.
So the more you listen to it, the more you apply, and the more you go back for feedback and review, the better you will get at listening to your intuition and trusting that it's going to lead you in the right direction. Because I know what a lot of people do is they'll get that intuition and they will ignore it, or they'll justify or rationalize because it's not comfortable. Like, it would have been very easy for me, for example, to feel good about moving here to Maine. Oh, but then we gotta buy the house, and that's a lot of money. Oh, but then our kids won't know anybody because we're leaving our friends, and my wife isn't going to be happy because of this and that. And so you create all these little stories to negate what your intuition is telling you. And by the way, it works positively and negatively. Like, if you know you shouldn't do something, you know you shouldn't do it.
But I really want to do it. Yeah, I really want to do it. So I'm going to do it.
I shouldn't. Yeah. I know I shouldn't buy that car that I'm really hopped up on right now. I shouldn't do it. Oh, but better gas mileage, yeah. and so you come up with all these rationalizations. Well, then why would you hone the skill of listening to your intuition if you're not going to take it? If you're going to justify and rationalize it away? So if you want to get better at being intuitive, I hate to say it, but you got to be intuitive. You got to follow through on it and let it go where it's going to go, and then feedback and analyze to see if it's taking you in the right course. And I think overwhelmingly, if you actually are listening and applying and acting on your intuition, you're going to find out that it's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing.
That's interesting. I even, like, sometimes if I'm in bed and I just have a hunch, like I need to check on the baby or whatever, even though I know he's probably okay or there's nothing in the backyard, I'll do it strictly from the perspective of, if I don't, then when do I?
You
know what I mean? And I
kind of skill.
And I think, you know what? Just do it anyway. And then I go and guess what? I check the backyard. Everything's fine. But I didn't and I don't use that as a negative, like, oh, I shouldn't have listened to my intuition. It's like, no, I'm going to continue to do so, because the minute I stop, then those things I'm just not going to even be aware of them.
Well,
so
let me give
I know
you
that
another,
sounds kind of weird example.
It's not. Well, it's not from me, because this is very prevalent in our church, Kip, right? What we're talking about here in the context of our church, instead of intuition, you would fill that in with Holy Ghost. Okay. Yeah. So a lot of you guys know that Holy Ghost, Holy Spirit, a lot of you guys probably feel the same way. I'm trying not to talk about it necessarily in a religious perspective or a spiritual perspective, but the principle is the same.
Yep.
Okay. So here's the deal. Think about it this way. Let's say that you've got somebody to a previous question, a brother, right? The first question. And your brother is reaching out for advice and input and guidance and direction. And you get, every time he asks, you give him solid information. And then he never acts on it. Like, he never does anything. You're like, try this and try that. And what have you thought about this? And he never does anything about it. How long before you stop giving him advice? It's not going to be that long.
Yeah.
Okay. The Holy Spirit, or intuition, works very much the same way. If you don't get up and you don't check the gate or whatever in the backyard, how long before you completely isolate that and turn that off. It's not going to be very long.
Yeah.
And even if it's still speaking to you, you're not going to acknowledge and recognize it there because you've got so comfortable turning it off and not acknowledging it. You're ignoring it. It's a sense. Whether you think it's a spiritual sense or something that we've developed and evolved over millions of years, I really don't care where you think it comes from. It's there.
Yep.
And the more you exercise it, like any muscle, the stronger it becomes, the more prevalent it becomes, the more relevant it becomes, and the less it begins to atrophy. And eventually it'll either stop altogether or you just will no longer even acknowledge or recognize that it's there. So use it, exercise it.
Well, and the impact could be dire. I mean, in this example, we're talking about, what house to buy or what state to move to, but that intuition could have been, hey, you need to call a buddy. You should check in on him, and you don't. Right. And unfortunately in my life, I've had close people in my life that I know that had those promptings of intuition of I should reach out to someone. And that person actually ended up committing suicide, days after. And you don't think that maybe that could have been the game changer? I mean, what's at stake is really, there's a lot at stake is ultimately what I'm trying to say. So,
I look at this from obviously order of man, we're talking to men. I look at it from the context of like men. Like, how do men deal with this stuff? And the thing that I would equate it to is, because this is something that I think men resonate with, battle, right? Like, when you go into battle, do you ignore things because you don't think they're relevant? No, of course not. Because like you said, the consequences are dire.
Yeah.
So you sit and you look at your war map and you look at your strategy and you turn to your generals and you look at how the men are going to carry out the orders and the instructions that you give. And you look at enemy positions, you play out scenarios. Hey, what if they do this? Then we're going to do this. And what if they do that? Then we'll change and we'll do this. You look for flaws and weaknesses and vulnerabilities in your defenses or your offense. Like, you look at the entire map. And yet somehow we as men have been led to believe that tapping into intuition or acknowledging our emotions, or maybe even reaching out for some help, some professional therapy and help when we don't have it all figured out ourselves and we're in our heads, and somehow we look at that as a weakness. No, it's not a weakness to cover all your bases. It's strategy. It's actually a strength, or I should say it can become a strength because now you acknowledge it, you recognize it, and you use it so that you can have an effective outcome for yourself, just like you'd want an effective outcome on the battlefield. But if you bury your head and stand on the battlefield and you're like, oh yeah, we know the gate back, there's no defense over here on our right flank, but I think that'll be okay.
We're busy fighting these guys in the front. Don't worry about that.
I think that's okay. What's going to happen? Of course, we know what's going to happen. But we do that in our lives when we I can't be emotional. Well, you shouldn't react emotionally, but to say that you shouldn't be emotional is a weird thing to say. You are a human being. Emotions are probably a pretty good thing to, tap into occasionally. That doesn't mean you should react solely on emotion, because here's the alternative, to go back to our battlefield analogy. Oh, our right flank is vulnerable. Let's send everybody to the right flank.
Because I'm super emotional about that flank.
Right. Yeah. Because I'm really wrapped up in that, so much so that I'm not going to worry about the front or the left or behind.
Yeah.
So you got to look at the entire thing, the package in its entirety.
Copy. All right, Jarrett Storrell. Ryan, my family is planning on a move about 11 hours from our current city. There's a lot of moving going on here.
Yeah, man.
Lots of family here and an excellent business venture. How did you validate the move across the country? What is your family dealing with major changes? Should have read this question at the same time. Anything you would add there?
How did I validate it? I did it, and then I'm like, was this a good idea after the fact? Look, I remember when we moved here for the first week. Oh, I remember vivid one conversation I had with my wife.
But what was the risk? Yeah, but if you don't mind me adding, like, what was the risk? Yeah.
No risk. So. I mean, look, from the outside looking in, I say no risk. It's not no risk. It's just a risk I was willing to take.
Yeah.
You know, like, okay, so we move up here, we hate it, and we're out a couple $100,000. We're out. I shouldn't even say it
But you
like
could
that. I
always
mean,
sell the house. You could
we could
always sell
sell
the
the. That's what I'm
house.
saying. We sell
Yeah.
the house. I was gonna say we're out a couple of years. No, we're not out a couple of years. We're together as family, like enjoying it,
Yeah.
trying, experimenting. And if we don't like it, we're like, in 5 years we'd have looked back and said, "Oh, remember that one thing we did in Maine? Like that was miserable." But remember that one time how cold we were and we were all bundled up together because we couldn't get warm? That was awesome.
Yeah.
Like
Totally.
there's no I I just
What's the
can't
risk
fathom.
anyway, right? What's risk perceived meaning around whether a judgment of a decision was right or wrong, right? Like, you know, I don't
And even still, like I'm trying to think about it in other contexts. Let's say you have a great job opportunity. So you're going to leave your other employer. You've been with them for 10 years and you're going to leave for this other job. And you're like, oh, there's a lot of risk in that. Is there though? Like, is there a lot of risk in that? Because worst case scenario, you just go back to your old job
yeah, totally.
or find something different. Like life is too short for
Yeah.
any of that stuff. Like, oh man, I'm just really comfortable here. What? You're comfortable? Who wants to be comfortable? That's
No.
crazy. That's hard for me to wrap my head around.
Yeah. Well, and we use this analogy all the time. It's like, I think let's say that there's risk of you moving to Maine and we call it risk. Then you identify that that wasn't the best decision, right? That the risk was too high. That also means that you didn't take advantage from the experience, right? Even if the
Yeah.
experience of moving Maine was like horrible, but you took advantage from it and learned, then you look back at it and go, oh, I'm so glad we made that decision. Why? Because I learned this, I learned that, I grew as a person, we pushed through as a family, became closer together. Awesome experience. Don't regret it.
Right.
So as long as you're growing and learning from whatever decisions you're making, there's opportunity is what it is. It's not risk. It's opportunity to learn, persevere, and grow. That's what it is. There's just opportunity constantly. Now, it's only a risk because if you don't learn or grow and become a better person from it, then it was a waste of your time. But that's still a choice, nonetheless.
Well, I think people really are referring to financial financial risk when they say this. That's their biggest hang.
Yeah,
If I had to
that's true.
assume, it's like,
Yeah,
okay, well, I'm going to leave this six-figure job, but this is promising to pay better, and like, what if it doesn't? Okay, so find another job.
yeah,
Start your own company. Maybe look, the popular phrase of today is privilege, right? That's your privilege speaking. Well, it's it's my belief in myself. If Order of Man dried up today for whatever reason, I don't even think of what that, or even if I had no desire to do it, you don't think in 24 hours I could be working in another job?
yeah. It's
We've set
confidence is
money
what it is.
aside. I have a skill set that is valuable to other people that I could go work with an employer. I could start a new business. There's no risk. There's no risk. In fact, I think the greater risk is not to go back to intuition, not doing that stuff because something is telling you to do something and you're not going to listen. Okay.
Yeah.
That's riskier to me than,
Because now
look,
you
I don't,
don't even know what was available to you. Yeah.
yeah, I don't want to sit on my deathbed and wonder like, oh, what if? Like, what a miserable way to go.
Yeah.
Like people ask me, what do you want your kids to know about me? I've had that question come up in the past. I'd want them to, anybody, whether it's a stranger or somebody listening to this podcast or my kids, my wife, is I want them to think and say, you know what? Dad tried everything that ever came to his mind. Like he didn't always
Lit.
succeed. He didn't
Yeah.
always like get it right. Sometimes he failed, sometimes he lost money, sometimes he struggled, but like everything that he wanted to do, like he went and did it. He tried it. That's what I actually want to be remembered for.
Yeah. The a phrase I like to use for that is living a life worth living.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
living. That's what living is.
I see these people that are so miserable, that go into work 9 to 5 or longer, and they're just miserable. And I'm like, oh, I feel bad actually. Like what? And I don't want to judge those people. Maybe they're actually really happy. My dad, for example, he worked in paint for his whole life. And I remember I went and worked with him one year. He worked at, if I remember right, I think it was like either Knight Paint or Benjamin Moore Paint or something. I can't remember exactly. Yeah. And I went to work with him and I watched him interact with customers. And I was like, man, he is like in his world right now. Like how he interacted with his customers, and people came in, they knew him in fact, they asked for him by name at a paint store. What I always thought, I'm like, oh, that's trivial. That's, why would you want to do that? But he loved it. He loved it. People would come in and ask him by name, and he'd look at, this was before you could like color match with lasers, and he would look at paint samples. They'd bring him like a little chip piece of paint, and he's like, I don't know. And he would do it by sight.
Yeah.
And he would match the paint, and he'd be like, here you go, and he'd get them all set up, and he'd upset, like, it was so cool to watch him in his zone. So don't mistake and think that I'm saying that you need to own a business. I'm not. I'm just saying you need to live your life that's meaningful. And if that's working at a paint store, then that's awesome. If it's starting your own business, that's awesome. If it's living out of a van and you find a way to support yourself periodically just enough to get gas for the next place that you're going, that's awesome. I don't care what it is. Whatever it is, make it work for you. Make it meaningful, because you know what? You might actually be dead tonight.
Yep. Viktor Frankl, he's on to something, that dude.
Yes. Yes, sir.
All right, Stephen Hooper II. No questions here. Just offering my gratitude for the constructive feedback you both offer each week, and I know that you'll keep up the great work for the men in this country. God bless the USA and the Iron Council.
Right on. Thanks, Stephen. Appreciate you, brother. He's been a big advocate, a big help. He's a great, actually, resource in the Iron Council, and he's really stepped up over the past 2 months, which I have recognized and acknowledged. He's really doing some awesome things. I'm excited.
Yeah, and it comes from living a meaningful life in the Iron Council, right? How can he provide value and add value to other people's lives? So, all right, we'll hop over to Facebook for a few here. So Nick Perry, the importance of remaining calm under stress and what that can instill in our children.
Well, I think this goes back to our emotional decisions. If you make decisions that are rash, then you're not pulling in all of the data.
Yeah.
So if you look at it from a mathematical standpoint, if you're trying to solve for X and you don't have all the variables or steps in the equation, the only way that you're going to solve for X is to get lucky and stumble upon it, which is not a very scientific method. Yeah. And look, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. If you stumble and win, cool, good for you. Yeah. There's two problems. Number one is it's not duplicatable. Like you can't replicate it. So
your kids aren't going to learn from that. Yeah.
Right. And then number two, this is the big threat. If you get lucky, and I believe there is luck, if you get lucky, you will trick yourself into believing that you're better at something than you really are.
Yeah.
I saw this in the stock market. When I would work with people's portfolios, they'd come in and they're like, yeah, I predicted the stock market for the last 10 years and I got this return and that return. And I would see these guys with pride and like puffed up chests. I'm so good at this. I'm so good at this. And then they lost their asses in 2008 and 2009.
Yeah.
Because they thought more highly of themselves because they got lucky, not because they had a systematic process that produced results. So getting lucky is actually a trap. It's not a good thing. It's good momentarily.
Yeah.
But then you trick yourself into believing that you're better than you actually are. So the reason that you want to be calm and collected and level-headed is so that you can bring in all of the variables into the equation, and then you can solve for X most effectively in a way that you can replicate. And that's the beauty of having a mathematical equation, because now once you have the equation, all you have to do is plug in the numbers and then it gives you the result. It's the same thing in business. When I have a system, look, so let's say, for example, we'll go back to what I was saying earlier. Order of man dries up for whatever reason. Well, I have everything documented, not only here, but I have it written down. I've got programs and systems and procedures and standard operating procedures. You've helped me go through some standard operating procedures. I could very easily say, Trish, my wife, here, now you start order of women.
Yeah.
And she could go do the same thing. That's the beauty of an equation. You just plug in the variables and then the outcome takes care of itself. So that's why you want to be calm. If you're just acting on emotion only, or fear, or that is an emotion, fear, greed, but you're not looking at the other inputs, then you're selling yourself short and you probably won't come to the conclusion that you'd like to.
Yeah.
And when it comes to kids we know that particularly with boys, and I think we talked about this last week, the brain doesn't even fully develop until early to mid 20s. Yeah. Women, girls, a little bit sooner, right? They mature more quickly. Well, if they're highly emotional, and they are, especially as they're going through puberty and they got the hormones and everything else, they're all out of whack and all skewed and everything else, and they don't learn to harness their emotions and use other inputs than the way they feel about things, they're going to make rash decisions, and they're going to make decisions that will ultimately impact their entire lives potentially. Getting into substance abuse, getting in with the wrong crowd just because they need some validation, doing something stupid, criminal activity because they want to be part of the cool crowd. So their motives are out of whack, which is primarily to be accepted and validated by a group of peers. That's not a great motive for kids or adults. But with kids, it's just magnified. So you as a father need to say, okay, look, you're upset. That girl dumped you. I get that. I would be upset too. And in fact, when I was younger, when the girl dumped me, I was upset. And here's what I've learned. Now they're getting more information from you to put into the equation. And it might not feel good initially, right? That you can tell your son, hey, that girl dumped you, but I promise you there's going to be 100 other girls that probably dump you, but then you're going to find the right one.
Yeah.
And and each one you're going to learn something from. You're going to have these relationships and you're going to learn. You're going to learn to cooperate. You're going to learn to be somewhat independent and not be totally reliant upon this individual because maybe they'll let you down if you have expectations. Like, you're going to learn this stuff. And it's your experience and perspective that can give that to them, because right now they're operating from, my heart is broken. And I'm just using that as an example, but I think we all get the point.
Yeah, copy. Phil Petty, parenting in a tech world. Any suggestions or recommendations?
Yeah. Well, think about it this way. My oldest son, he loves to be outside. He loves to hunt. He loves nature. He loves wildlife. He's fascinated. He's always been fascinated by them. And if I just said, hey, son, I know you're really into hunting and conservation, and I bought you this new 223. Why don't you go ahead and take it out and have some fun? See you later. No. How well do you think that would go? He'd shoot himself, or he'd shoot somebody else, or it would not go well. But if, on the other hand, I said, hey, son, I know you're really into hunting, and I've been hunting over the past 3 years, and I'd like you to come out this morning with me and watch what I do, and let's go shoot our gun, and here's a 22 that you're going to start with, and then, here's a 410 shotgun, and now here's the rifle, and you teach them the firearm safety rules. Like, you teach them all this stuff, right? And you coach them and you bring them along and you teach them and you instruct them. And then you're like, hey, son, you're old enough to hunt by yourself. You earn this rifle. Here you go. You have your licenses. You have guns. Here's the ammo. Here's where you're going. You have a plan. You're going camping. You're going with friends. How well do you think that would go? Of course, it would go so much better, and it would likely produce valuable results for them. Technology is the same. We villainize technology, but we wouldn't have the medical advancements. More people have been lifted out of poverty. More people are free. Democracy is spreading throughout the world, not just the country, obviously, but the world. Yeah. Access to
information is
clean water, to information, all through the power of technology. It's a wonderful tool, but used in a harmful way, of course, it's going to produce inferior results. So it's just like a tool, and you need to teach your children how to use it effectively. Where is social media appropriate? Where is the internet appropriate? Why is YouTube good? How can you use it to make yourself better? My sons, they like to watch Dude Perfect, which I have no problem with. The guys they're clean and they're having fun and they seem to be wholesome. Like, I have no problem with that at all. But also I'm like, okay, well, what are you learning too? You're being entertained, but what are you learning? Oh, you liked those trick shots they did? Cool, let's get our Nerf guns and we'll go out and do it. And then we do it together. So you sprinkle the technology with other things that are part of this, like the physical realm, and you just teach them how to use it effectively.
Yeah, I like that. Snipes Arma, my wife to be has a problem with me visiting her family for the first time before we tie up the knot. What should I do, and what could be the problem?
I don't know. What does she say? That's weird to me. She not
That is
proud of you?
weird.
Is she embarrassed?
A little
Is
nervous.
there something in her? This would be a huge red flag for me. Like, is there something in your past that your parents might let me know about? Are you embarrassed of me? There's some real things going. There's a trust issue here.
Someone.
Either she doesn't trust you, or she doesn't trust her family, or something about trust in her past. So I think without knowing the context of this is weird. She should be excited. She should be thrilled. And if I'm in your shoes, again, I don't know the context of this. If I'm in your shoes and my wife doesn't want to introduce me to her family before she ties a knot, I ain't tying the knot, buddy. Because this is a package deal. You don't come without your family.
Totally. Well, and let's assume it's the opposite, right? She doesn't trust her family, but she still doesn't trust you well enough to actually tell you what's going on with the family, right? Like, that's a problem in itself, right? So
yeah, she doesn't trust the family. Okay, well, why isn't she explaining that to you? Why aren't you asking that question? And what and like, why? What's the story? You got to know.
Yeah.
You got to, and look, this is not always true, but her family is a pretty good indicator of the way that she's going to go. It's not, I know there's exceptions to that, but my mother-in-law, she's a lovely woman. She's kind and gracious and loving. She's been a committed mother and wife. She's an amazing woman. It's no surprise to me that her daughter is the same way. It seems pretty natural, right? Yeah. And very rarely does it not work out like that. So like, I want to know, I want to meet the mother of my future bride because that's her in 30 years. Yeah. Probably.
And you're going to have to deal with that family anyway, whether you guys like them. I mean, they're kind of tied to the hip. I mean, there's a reason why so many countries have arranged marriages, because it is a little bit of a family ordeal, right? It kind of affects a whole lot of people. So,
and even if it doesn't, her family is part, like, even if she's no longer connected, her family is still part, her family is in her
identity. Yeah, yes. Totally. Yeah.
You got to figure this stuff out, man. I don't know what to tell you.
Good luck there. All right, Tavis.
It's a red flag, and you got to deal with it.
Yeah. Tavis Weimer. When should I plan on becoming a father? We get this question a lot, actually. Don't you think? I think we do.
Yeah, I think we get it more than.
Yeah, like when should I have kids? Than I thought we would. When should I be a father? Yeah.
I mean, there's no set time.
Don't do it, dude. It's so crappy. Are you?
No, I say do it.
Do it and then work long hours so you don't have to hang out with them because they're a pain.
Are you serious? I mean, I know you're saying that tongue in cheek, but like, I think there's a lot of people that are like, and I don't think this about you, Kip, but honestly, I think the current narrative is like kids are a pain in the ass and they're a hindrance to my own growth and progress. I don't think that about you, but I think that is the common narrative, and I wholeheartedly disagree with that.
I think, how's this? I think my kids have been some of the most difficult things I've ever had to deal with, and I'd still do it again.
I can agree with that.
So those people that are like, oh, they're a hindrance and they're difficult, but they're right, actually. But the part that they're not seeing is the level of joy and satisfaction that you get from life from being a parent.
I can't bring myself to say the words that those people who look at children as a hindrance are right. I don't think they're right at all. No. I think it might take them down a different path, but I don't think, like, let's say a woman, she has career aspirations, and instead she decides, you know what, I'm gonna marry this man and I'm gonna have kids with him and I'm gonna stay at home and raise these kids. I don't think that's a hindrance to her path. I think her path changes. And I think she wouldn't regret a minute of that.
Totally.
Same thing with a man.
Well,
I think a man who is like, I have career aspirations and I don't want anything to get in my way or slow me down. I think a man who has children and he, does the right thing by committing to them because he brought them into this world would say that my career is so much less relevant than I thought it was 10 years ago.
Totally.
Before I had kids.
I mean, what are we going to be concerned about, right? When we die, by the way, we all do that. What are we going to be concerned about? It's not anything other than our kids, our relationship with our spouse and how we did as parents. And that's where fulfillment of life, that's where legacy comes from. It doesn't come from superficial BS from how awesome I did at my job in the grand scheme of things. And I don't want to assume, well, I'm going to assume, but Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong. We could look at you and say influential has made a major positive impact in many people's lives, right? Through the Iron Council, through the Order of Man podcast. And I would assume you would give that all up if you had to choose between influencing your children and your family versus all of those men.
Oh, any day of the week, of course.
Yeah. Like it's what's more important than everything else.
So here's the answer to the question. It's not when you're ready.
Because you'll never be ready.
You'll never be ready. To your point, it's going to wreck your world for a minute. I should say, I don't want to say wreck, because I don't want to talk about it in negative. It's going to rock your world for a minute. I mean, your world is going to be flipped upside down. But it's going to be worth it. So it's not when you're ready. It's when you're mature. It's when you have a desire. There's two things.
Yeah, you got to want, yeah.
Yes, there has to be desire. Okay, so desire is the first qualifier. The second is maturity. It's financial maturity, it's physical maturity, it's emotional maturity, and mental maturity. It's when you're ready and you're mature enough to bring a child into the world, which could mean when you're 20 years old. I know plenty of men who had kids when they were 20, and they were plenty mature and have raised some amazing, amazing human beings. And I know men who are 50 years old who should have never had children in their life because they're just not mature enough to deal with it.
Yeah.
They're selfish and they're immature and they get wrapped up in the wrong things and they're overly emotional and they should not be bringing kids in this world because they're not mature enough to deal with it. And I can't tell you what that looks like specifically. There's no objectionable or objective, you check off these 10 boxes and that means you're mature enough. No, I think you know. Are you mature enough to handle this responsibility? Yes. And are you ready? And if you can check off both of those boxes, then I say you should seriously contemplate bringing kids into this world. And one thing that doesn't get talked enough about is you want to change the world? Imagine millions and millions of men raising, let's say on average, 2 to 3. Let's say 2. So you have 1 million men who raise 2 righteous, capable, strong-willed people, human beings. The 1 million men just turned into 3 million, right? 2 million offspring plus them. Now it's 3 million. Then those 3 million have 2 kids each. And what is that? You want to change the world? Be a righteous man and teach your children righteousness, and we will change the world.
Yeah.
We don't talk about that enough. A lot of people talk about not bringing kids into the world because of the times that we live in. But could you imagine if all of us who were ready, had the desire and the maturity to bring kids in the world, how that would radically transform this country, let alone the planet? I think it would radically alter what we're dealing with here.
Yeah. When the opposite of that is what has affected our world in such a negative way.
Yeah, fatherless
people not
homes.
Doing that.
Well, or them bringing kids into the world. Yeah, exactly. Bring kids into the world and not being mature enough to stick with it and to follow through on their commitments and to honor their commitments. And then you have a bunch of, it's like Lord of the Flies on steroids. I mean, that's what we're seeing right now. We're seeing all these young kids who were not fathered or fathered by the state or the educational system. And now they're running around like Lord of the Flies thinking that, they're king shit and they can destroy things and break things and mess with other people. And that's what they have been led to believe.
Yeah.
Let's take 1 or 2 more.
All right. Jeff Swatch. My question would be how to be the best father possible and be a man my daughter has set as her standard for how their future partner should be?
I can appreciate the question. It's just not a great question. And I'll say it, and I'll tell you why. It's not because it's like a bad question. It's just because you just do everything that we've talked about in the podcast. Yeah. It would be hard for me to say, oh, do this one thing. Like, do everything that we talk about in the podcast. And then maybe if there's something specific, that would be a better question to ask here, because then we can get maybe more into the nitty gritty. Because right now it's so broad, I don't even know how to answer it. I'm like, oh. Yeah, totally. The one thing I would say, though, is I would say, look at your job as you putting yourself out of work. I've said it before. Your job as a father is to render yourself obsolete. And I think if you use that as the foundation for your job as a father, then the other pieces will start to align themselves, because you'll think, okay, what does this child need for them to no longer need me? Well, in this instance, they need empathy. In this instance, they need a hug. In this instance, they need discipline. And so you start looking at all of these little micro interactions with your children from the 30,000 foot view of render myself obsolete, put myself out of work. And I think you'll make better decisions if that is the foundational principle, and you'll make the right decisions, which sometimes means a little tough love, and other times it means, let me give you a big bear hug because this is what you need right now.
Totally.
It's a really general, broad answer. It's a broad question, so that's the best I can give.
Yeah. Well, and I want to provide maybe some clarity for Jeff, right? Because you said everything that we talk about on this podcast, and some guys might think like everything that we talk about regarding being a parent. That's not what Ryan's saying. We're saying, hey, you should work out. Yeah, that's part of it. You should have goals and you should be working on a hobby. Yeah, that's part of it, right? Like literally all those things is part of being a good father and being a great example to your kids, including your daughter. All those things, not just like, how I should talk to them. No. Like if you're out of shape, you don't have a good diet, you're not working out, you don't have hobbies, you're not working on yourself, you're surrounding yourself with negative people, you have a negative mindset, all those things are all part of what we're saying about becoming a better father and being a good example to your kids.
You're absolutely right. And I'll say something that I know is controversial, because when I say things like this, people push back on it. Some people do anyways. Yeah. Is, look, if you're fat and overweight and out of shape, you're not as good a dad as you could be.
It's true.
You're not as good of a husband. You're not performing as well as you could at work. You're not as intimate as your wife. In fact, she might not even be as attracted to you as she should be. So that's going to create intimacy issues, which then in turn creates trust issues. Oh, and by the way, if you're fat and out of shape and overweight, then there's probably some trust issues with your wife and your kids and your clients and everybody else who's looking to you for guidance, because you're telling them through your actions and your appearance that you aren't a man of your word, that you aren't disciplined, that you aren't committed. And I know that there's guys listening who are overweight and out of shape that are all butthurt and offended about this right now. I just know that this is true, because I'm not pointing it at you. I'm pointing at the guy in the mirror. I know when I was 50 pounds overweight that I was less effective. My wife, frankly, she didn't want to have sex. Why would she want to have sex with me? A fat slob laying on her? Like, why would she want that? Why would I want that if she was that way? No, of course not. Okay, so same thing with your kids. Like, you're telling your kids to be disciplined and to be active and to do their work, and then you sit your ass on the couch and watch 3 hours of TV, behind a bowl of mac and cheese and a beer. Like, what are they going to learn?
Yeah. And those reasons that you have for like, oh, well, it's okay because but they don't even care about any of those reasons.
They don't care about that.
Yeah. You think those matter, but they really don't.
No, they don't. They don't. They matter to you because you're lying to yourself and you're trying to fool yourself, but you ain't fooling anybody else. In fact, you're not even fooling yourself, which is why there's so much depression and anxiety amongst men who aren't fulfilling their commitments to themselves, because they have this internal dialogue, this conflicting dialogue in their head. One says, I'm a man of my word. I want to do good. I want to be strong. I want to be assertive, and I want to be bold. Oh, but I'm a fat piece of shit, and I'm not doing this, and I'm lazy, and I'm out of shape and overweight. And so a lot of guys are going to misconstrue this and think that I'm being mean. I actually am not being mean. I want you to lose weight so that you can live the life that you want to live. I want you to get strong so you can make more money, so you can have good sex, so you can be intimate with your wife, so you can be engaged with your kids, so you can have hobbies that are meaningful, so you don't die early. I actually care enough about you to tell you that being fat is not good for you. I don't think so low of you that I'm going to say, it's okay. Yeah, you're overweight. It's okay. That means I don't care about you, but I do care about you. So I want you to win. And look, I think you could be a good person, but good is morality, right? Like and this is even debatable. Morality is integrity.
Yeah.
So if you're telling yourself, part of morality is integrity. So if you're telling yourself, hey, yeah, I really want to get in shape and I want to be strong for my wife and kids and lead effectively, but you can't go to the gym and you can't refrain from eating everything in sight, there might be a morality issue too there. So I do believe that you can be a good man to a degree, but I don't think in his book, David Gilmour talks about this manhood in the making, the distinction between being a good man and being good at being a man. I want to be both. I want to be a good man and I want to be good at being a man. I want to be a manly man. And that's going to require me being in shape. It's very, very important.
Yeah. And all of us can relate to this, right? Even like you skinny guys are like, oh, I got to, no. Like, are you waking up early? Are you getting your workout in? Like, are you saying things to your kids that you're not doing? Like, I put myself in check all the time when I'm like, hey guys, you need to get your chores done before you go goofing around. And then I think, actually, did I get my stuff done?
Did I do that?
You know what I mean? Yeah. Before I was doing my thing, am I eating like crap, but I criticize them for doing it? Am I like, hey, get off your tablets? And then I'm sitting at the dinner table, playing on my phone. Like, trust me, there's lots of opportunities where we might be out of integrity. And in this example that Ryan's giving is just one of them. there's many opportunities for us to self-evaluate a little bit and see where we need to put ourselves in check.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, man. Let's wrap things up.
Should we wrap up on that rant?
Yep.
Yeah.
No, it's good. And not enough
so
people
important.
are talking about it because it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to tell people that I don't want to have that conversation. It's uncomfortable. But we need to have those in fact, the uncomfortable conversations are the ones that we should be having because everybody else is having the easy conversations. So let's talk about what it means to be 50 pounds overweight and why it isn't good for you and why you should not be that way. That doesn't make people feel good, which is part of the problem in society is that because it doesn't feel good, then we can't discuss it. We can't address it. And you know what? You're going to walk around your whole life avoiding looking in mirrors, wearing a shirt when you're at the pool or the lake, avoiding any sort of confrontation with other people that might improve you. You don't want to live like that.
Yeah.
You're miserable. Look, I know you're miserable because I was miserable. I was embarrassed. I didn't want to take my shirt off. I didn't want people to look at me. I thought people were talking weird about me and saying things behind my back. They probably weren't, but I thought that. I remember when I went to the gym for the first time in like 6 years. In fact, I still have the picture. I felt stupid. I was like, I don't belong here. I thought people would laugh or think poorly of me, and nobody did. I mean, maybe there was one person that maybe thought something, but not enough to the point where I couldn't go do it. But look, I know what it's like. You don't want to be like that. It's not about what I think. I know you don't want to feel like that. So let's do something about it. Let's fix it.
Yeah, totally. And build that confidence that you want, right? That mental fortitude that you get from all that action.
Totally.
All right. So join us, Iron Council. We've talked about it a little bit. To learn more about the exclusive brotherhood called the Iron Council, you can go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. And of course, join us on Facebook if you haven't already at facebook.com/groups/Order of Man. Support the podcast many ways on YouTube, podcast aggregator, or whatever tool you use. You can follow Mr. Mickler on Instagram and
Mr. Wickler, old Wickler.
Old
man Wickler.
We're going to Mitchler and Wickler. Old man Wickler. All right. We're getting some ideas now. Wickler. That's right.
No,
all right. Follow Mr. Mickler on Twitter and Instagram at RYANMICHLER. And of course, upcoming events, just really quick. September 3rd through the 6th is the Legacy event. To learn more, orderofman.com/legacy. And then the Order of Man event in Maine, October 9th through the 11th. To learn more, orderofman.com/Maine event, as in the state, Maine event. There you go.
Got her. All right, guys, we appreciate you. Great questions today. Keep them rolling. We'll keep giving you those answers, and then we'll be back again for another interview Actually, no, let's see. We'll be back on Friday. Got a good one on Friday. A
Cool.
little bit of a rant from me about investing in yourself. So stay tuned for that one. Make sure you're subscribed and you leave a rating and review because that goes a long way. And then you'll get the alerts when the new podcasts drop. All right? Cool. All right, guys. We'll see you on Friday. Until then, go out there, take action, become the man you are meant to be.